Hello, hello, hello. It's me, Michelle, your host and Pocket TJ of Coffee Fueled Stories. And today, our fresh brewed episode, it's a very special 666 episode with Michael freaking Arnzen. Hello.
Hello. Glad to be here.
This is so cool. So, I'm going to fill the listeners in a little bit in regard to how freaking awesome this is to have you on the show. Way back when I was a little undergrad, Dr. Sandner, David, now I can call him that, David, and your friend and college buddy,
Yeah.
he was my professor for horror lit, and he introduced us, the class, to you, and my mind was blown with gorgeous goreness, and I love. Mike, I domestic fowl, your poem, domestic fowl. So we read 100 Jolts and Dying. Those are the two books that we had in class.
Okay.
And domestic fowl and Cow Cafe have lived in my head ever since 2007 or 2008 whenever I had his class. So that is the impact you have had on me.
That's awesome. No
So to
wonder you're
have
so deranged.
so like I said, to have you here, to have and especially I've said this before, like meeting you at the Queen Mary, on the worst, like one of the worst days of my life, and you writing highlights for Satan in my book and cracking me up. Like you made my day out of, like I said, out of the worst day of my life, you made me laugh.
Well,
So
good. See, everybody says morbid stuff is sick and perverse. No, it's life affirming in
like
some twisted way.
So, like I said, I am a big fan of your twisted gorlets and your poems and you're so creative. Like you have so many different outlets for how you create just craziness. I listened to you have an album, Audio Vial. I listened
Right.
to that. So I got to listen to Domestic Fowl again. I got to you with music. Um, so my first question to you is your creative playground. Is there a creative playground you have not made disturbing content in or tried yet?
You seem to be implying that wherever I go, I'm disgusting. But that might be true. I don't know. See, whenever there's something new, especially on the technological horizon, I like to see what I can do with it. And if I just have this viewpoint of the world that's bent, I guess. A lot of people have different definitions for the horror genre. They'll say it's the genre of fear or the genre about death, and those are valid points. Douglas Winter once famously argued, no, horror isn't even a literary genre. It's not necessarily an art form. It's an emotion, and so stories that convey that emotion belong in the horror genre. But my definition of horror is that horror is a worldview. It's kind of a filter you look at things through. And it might be a caustic, toxic view, but it doesn't have to be. It can just be this like darkened lens. It's not rose colored, it's blood colored, you know? And it's a darkened lens on which to look upon things and to kind of be almost absurdly realistic about the fact that, you can't paint everything with rainbows. That death is bound to happen. There may be an afterlife. There may be alternative explanations for reality, like in the Twilight Zone. And I love that stuff. I loved reading it growing up. I love all the media forms that I've ever seen, playing games, movies, whatever. And I figure, why not bring that lens to any form of medium? So, if something new comes around, I try to darken it up somehow, especially when it's like everybody's like, cheering it on and say, you all need to get cell phones. Oh, really? Have you read Stephen King's Cell? That kind of thing. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but I feel like I try to bring that worldview to the different media that I find entertaining. And to me, like everything's almost like a typewriter. It's a kind of literary toy. If you can communicate through it, I want to tell horror stories through it. So, and I've been lucky in my career to kind of dabble in all sorts of different things. In some ways, that's bad because I'm not like a brand name novelist, which is what most people think a writer is just they write novels. But that's not true. Anyone who studied an English major or something like that knows there are various genres and modes. So anyway, I guess part two of that is that, as you sort of indicated at the beginning, I prefer or I kind of am drawn to writing short formats, like almost like joke length stories and poems. I just feel like there's a lot you can do with that, playing off of people's expectations and so forth. And it allows me to do things that writing a novel or even a short story wouldn't necessarily.
Absolutely. I love that you get in and get out. Like you're like I said, when I had no idea Flash existed, horror
Oh,
Flash specifically, because we were introduced to it with your
mhm.
book and books, I should say, Dying and 100 Jolts. And yes,
Is it in reverse? It's probably in reverse.
it's
So
all.
pronounce it satanically.
Speaking of which, that's why we are talking today on 666 because your podcast is 666. So why don't you let the listeners know a little bit about your awesome podcast?
Well, first off, you have the awesome podcast, as anyone who's listening to this knows. I was listening to a bunch of episodes. I subscribed a little while back, but there was one episode, it's my favorite so far, with Linda Addison and Jamal Hodge, where they bring up the idea of eating a puppy and try to
Oh,
get you to talk about what part of the body you would eat first. I thought that was great. And to me, that sorry for the flashback there, but to me, that's what podcasts, can do. They can kind of capture those live, weird, esoteric things that people talk about in everyday conversations, or, maybe not everyday conversations, but you can get the conversational tone of a dialogue with somebody if you're interviewing them like this. Or, like in my case so far, I've just been doing little monologues. And I just talk about a strange topic or something that's going on in my life. I try to read maybe a short poem or a brief work of flash fiction, or I take a listener question and answer that in a strange way that they probably don't expect me to. But I guess I should talk about what the format is too. The podcast is called 6 Minutes and 66 Seconds with Michael Arnzen. And it's kind of a play off of the TV news show 60 Minutes. The logo and everything looks like it. But
I
it's
love
only
it.
it's only literally 6 minutes. I'm sorry, 7 minutes and 6 seconds for perfectionists. But I kind of play off of that with the 666 reference. Because it's a pretty dark, the topics I bring up. Um, I don't think I mark it as a mature audiences only kind of thing. It's not like that, but you know me.
It's gonna be dark. It's
It's
gonna be,
gonna be-
but good dark, good dark. Like it's domestic fowl. That, like I said, still disturbed by that, and Cow Cafe still disturbed by it. But disturb. Here's the thing, Mike. This is disturbed in an amazingly cool way. Like I said, when we read that, I was just like, "Oh, this is disgusting. This is so disgusting, but it's also so brilliant. It's so brilliant." Like I'm telling you, you're reading that those books, your Flash horror Flash. We had to create horror Flash in David's class,
Mhm.
and I created pieces that were disturbing and sick, but made me laugh. Like I had no idea I had this in me. Like, it opened up something in me, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. I like this. I'm
Well,
having
that's
fun.
awesome. I mean, I think anyone who's a horror fan, even if they come at it late in the game or something like that, uh, it's just part of, there's like, I don't even know how to put it. It's almost like a tribe of people who have this worldview I was talking about. It's like it's built into our brains that we can see the world a little crooked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and the laughter, humor and horror have a strange relationship. Um, I'm the kind of person who laughs out of nervousness all the time. It's just like my instant reaction to things. If I'm nervous, I just start like chuckling and making jokes and stuff. And it usually helps lighten other people's moods, maybe mine a little bit too. That's just the way I'm built. But not everybody gets it, and I feel sorry for them.
Yeah. Totally.
But
Totally.
as writers, we're kind of preaching the gospel of this stuff to, other people to say, like, come on, get over your hangups. Check it out. This stuff is cool. You like this? You want more? Read my next book. Read Stephen King. Read Stephen Graham Jones, whatever it might be, And I just love the fact that horror is so popular these days,
Yeah.
and diverse. It's amazing to me.
Yeah.
And, to go to your initial question, though, I try to give back what I enjoyed growing up. I try to write the sort of stories I like to read. So it's very edifying to hear that it made a mark on you, the devil's mark. And I'll be seeing you in hell later. But for now, I,
It's gonna be great. We're gonna drink coffee for
I,
life. There.
yes, I
Yes.
am. I am a caffeine fiend for sure. I'm drinking it right
Yes.
now, 6 o'clock at night. It's crazy.
Same same here. I love it. So okay, let's talk about this. So Gorlitz is kind of like where you talk about how kind of it all kind of came together.
Mhm.
And it's in regard to the PDA that you got. And you wanted, this goes back to the very beginning about the technology.
Yeah.
And so the first playground that you had where you were going to take this technology and you were going to do something different with it. So my question to you is, do you still have that PDA that you created these little gorlets in?
Ah. I do. I found it in a box of things that I recently put into storage. I wish I had it here to show you. I actually went through two PDAs. The first one was a gift. And for those who don't know what a PDA is, that stands for Personal Digital Assistant. Palm Pilots is what they were called back then, and that was the brand name. I had one of those as I received as a gift, and I didn't know what to do with it because it was made for like business people to track their schedules or whatever before people were using cell phones and
Yeah.
barely using the internet. So I decided to use it, like I said before, as a kind of literary toy and started writing poems on the thing and using the internet to deliver those very short, almost cell phone screen sized poems to anybody else that wanted to read them. And I mean, I was pretty amazed by I guess because I was the first one doing something like literary with a PDA that I got a lot of subscribers. It was reviewed in Wired magazine. I mean, it got a lot of attention at the time for being a stupid little gimmick that I did. But I challenged myself to publish basically a new sick little poem called The Gorlet every week and had subscribers. And then people were actually paying me kind of, it was a proto form of Patreon or something like that, where people could subscribe to this and pay me if they wanted to. And I was getting some money that encouraged me to keep going. And so I bought a new, it was a Sony Clee at the time, if anyone out there remembers that. That was like an upscale version of a PDA back in, what was it, 2004? I don't know.
Totally.
20 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
Seems like yesterday to me, but
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah, cool stuff. Cool stuff.
Very cool. Very cool.
And now all those poems and more were eventually collected in that book that you referenced. I have it right here, The Gorlitz Omnibus, which Raw Dog Screaming Press put out, a long time ago, but they did it in some really nice editions. They did a hardcover version that has 50 extra pages in it and such. And right now, I'm developing a kind of a sequel to it. So it's not, it hasn't been contracted for yet. So I hate like saying or doing too much with it or about it. But so the sequel, in my mind, it's the sequel anyway. I'm titling it Bluebird Guts. And if you subscribe to my podcast, 6 minutes and 66 seconds, I should give the website 6m6, wait,
Do it.
6m66s.com. If you follow the podcast, you will be able to hear me reading some of the poems from that. Oh, it's also on my Instagram too. For National Poetry Month, I posted a poem a day from the manuscript. But anyway, the reason it's called Bluebird Guts is because I published tons of sick, twisted little think pieces, poems, gorlets, even very short stories on Twitter when Twitter, was legit and not toxic and weird. Back when people loved it, and I loved it. I thought it was a perfect way to deliver these little tidbits of terror or whatever. So I have like 500 pieces. And I guess a casual listener to this might think, oh, tweets, big deal. But I actually put a lot of time into crafting those things because, I take it seriously. I'm a horror poet. This any tweet I make could turn a reader off and make them think this guy's a hack. I'm not going to buy his books or whatever. So I really put a lot of thought into it. And I've revised them all. I'm almost done. Titles on things that didn't have titles. I've basically composed those into this collection. So I'm looking forward to that being sold, published in the near future.
I can't get enough of it. It's sick, twisted brilliance. That's how I describe it. Like you used to do, I don't know if you still do this, with the magnets. You would make poems with them. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if there's a medium that you don't play with, that you don't experiment with. And your silly little like I used to look forward to seeing your silly little magnet poems, you know? Um,
Yes, that was called The Fridge of the Damned.
yes.
And they were refrigerator magnet words that you could turn into a poem, right?
Yes.
Everybody's seen those on refrigerators. But that whole thing was an interesting Kickstarter project that my publisher, Raw Dog Screaming Press, kind of said, "Hey, Mike, let's turn this into a Kickstarter and actually get people to be interested in participating in this kind of event of creating fridge magnets out of the words from the Gorlitz Omnibus." So they were riffing off of something I did online once upon a time. I had like bought a JavaScript that allowed me to create, a mock refrigerator on the web. So you open the website and it's a thing where you can move the tiles around of different words. And I thought that was clever. I called it the fridge of the damned. But then the code changed, HTML upgraded, and all this other stuff. And I was like, oh, this is too difficult for me to keep going. So I just canned it. But then they brought it back in the real world through refrigerator magnets. And they came in their own tin, and it was backed by enough people to fund this project. And I used to bring those magnets to conventions and things. So anybody who came to my book signing table, they could play with the fridge magnets and make their own little sick poem. And then I'd take a picture of it and post it online. I was using Flickr for that at the time. I think it's probably still out there. You could probably see them if you dig around. The fridge of the damned.
That
Yeah,
was,
that was fun.
like I said, the fact that you are able to do all of these different, create that's the playground. That's the only word I can, find because, like I said, you have so many different forms that so you did, there was a movie, you just did a movie.
Yeah.
So you have the movie, a podcast, refrigerator magnets, audio vial, like I said, books, so many different things, and like I said, the PD, the short, like it's just I don't know. I just like I said, I love the brilliance of it, and you inspire me to be able to not stay in a box, and that just like I said.
Well, let's talk about
mind
that a little
blown.
bit. I want to hear more from you about that. Like, what box were you in, or have you found yourself in that you've broken out of?
So Flash, you introduced me to Flash.
Oh,
And so I've my writing background, so I'll give you the very concise version. So I knew I wanted to be a writer when I was a kid, but it wasn't very fostered, right? My family, they were like, arts is something you do as a hobby, you don't make a living at it. So go find a real job, to go make a living off of. So fast forward, went into the military, which I would like to talk with you about.
oh, okay.
Went into the military, then went into corporate America, then got my master's, then went back to corporate America. So my path is very crazy.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with SOPs and technical writing. That's just my natural inclination. So I just love that order and that efficiency.
Yeah.
So fast forward 20 some years, maybe, let's say I was 30, 37, I think, when I was 38, when I was introduced to your work. So fast forward, so now take my natural inclinations and the stifled writer,
Mhm.
and now meet Michael Arnzen and his little twisted. So I actually, you would call them. I was listening to your episode, the Edgar Allan Poe episode, your dark poetry episode, "The Truth
Uh,
About Eve," and you called it a sacrilegious dad joke. And
You're right. I am brilliant. A sacrilegious dad joke.
you called it a sacrilegious dad joke.
I guess
This,
that's what
this
it was.
and like I said, when I read your work and I saw how efficient and brilliant and twisted one could be with words in these little snippets, my brain, I was just like, yes, thank you. Someone can go in, use a few words, tell a story in just a few words, and entertain and delight people with, in disgust, with disgusting content. Um, and it just, like I said, you like that seed was planted. And from that point forward, I was just like, I love horror flash. It is my favorite, favorite, favorite genre.
Yeah.
And I love to play in it. Like to me, the less words that you can create and still tell a disturbing
Mhm.
yet delightful story, that's talent. That's skill.
Yeah. There's just so many writers that overwrite, and I get impatient with it myself. So maybe I'm just a hyperactive ninny. Uh, but I don't skip to the end. The writing that really enthralls me, if it's long, is if the prose style really pulls me in, so that every sentence is its own almost story. You know what I mean? Or it's like
Yes.
a movie where every shot is so beautiful, you don't care about the story as much, or you're willing to, be patient with it, let it
Yeah.
slow burn, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm actually right now trying to develop or reconnect, I guess, with that side of myself that has the patience to concentrate that long and tell longer stories, because I've been doing this short stuff for the longest time, and I will always do it because it's just built into me. But there's a reason that a lot of people don't know it. Like you said, you were what, 34 years old, you hadn't heard of the kind of format of a flash fiction story. And I think the reason for it is because it doesn't pay any money. So writers don't have the incentive to do it. You know what I mean? Now you can if I have gotten paid the most money I ever got for a story that was under 1,000 words, which is my definition of flash fiction personally, was for a book called He is Legend. And he wrote I Am Legend, which was a Charlton Heston movie, then remade into a Will Smith movie. So I took Matheson's famous hyper short story called Born of Man and Woman and wrote a sequel to that. That story is told from the point of view of uh, what could be a monster chained in the basement of a family, or it could just be like an abused child. You don't really know. And in fact, the story kind of plays off the fact that there's something monstrous happening because of child abuse. So even though the protagonist, the storyteller, is a monster who barely can speak English, that was why that was hard for me to write, by the way. I was like, what? It's a marvelous story. So anybody who has an inkling to try to read more of this stuff, seek out Richard Matheson's Born of Man and Woman. I can't remember which collection it's in. It's a famous short story. Um, but if you can find that and you love it, you might want to get He is Legend and read the sequel that I wrote. Other people are in that book too. You know, Joe Hill, Stephen King, a lot of big famous authors are in that collection. So that was the most money I ever got for flash fiction. And guess what the check was? You will not believe me. You will think I'm lying, but yes, you'll guess. It was $666. That's right. Now, I don't know how the editor planned that, per word somehow. That's what he paid me. So I gladly photocopied that check and then cashed it. Um,
Awesome. That's awesome. Oh my
but yeah,
gosh.
I guess my point in brief, though, is just that a lot of people don't take risks in doing the sort of things that I'm doing because they're after the money. They want to make a living off of being a writer, be a full-time writer, or be able to pay their mortgage off or something. And I am fine with that. I understand that. I make a living off of horror, but it's through not just my books and not just the poetry collections and CDs and everything. It's from being a teacher. I teach and I have the good fortune to be a professor of horror, basically. So I got to study it for my PhD program. I got to teach it when I got hired at Seton Hill University. And I mean, it's building my retirement package right now, which a lot of writers don't have. So I'm not going to complain that I'm not a best-selling novelist. I'm very happy in what I do and very lucky and fortunate. And I love teaching other people, of course. I don't just do it for the money, which is always the worst motive you can have. There are so many easier ways to make money, than writing.
Right?
So,
It's and I love that. Like I seriously, if I was a student, like one of your students, I would just be constant. I would be sitting in the front just with the biggest grin, just being like, "Oh, what are we gonna learn today?"
oh, you're one of those.
Yes.
My minions, I love them.
Yes, I would be right in front. Like I have a I know exactly what seat. I never want to sit like right in the front. I either sit off to the left or off to the right. So I would probably sit, so it would be you would be looking out to the students, I would be to your left. You would see me right there, smiling, happy, with frantically taking notes with my hands, just going, "Yes, what do you have to tell me now? What can I learn from you? Give me all this good horror knowledge." So, yes, that would be me. And I would ask for extra credit. I would be like, "What can I
Oh.
read? What more can I read?" Or, but no. So, okay. So, my
Yeah,
cousin, her name is Demery. And
Demery.
yes, I know, isn't that the coolest name?
It is. I like it.
She introduced me to Texas Chainsaw Massacre at her slumber party when I think she turned 13.
Okay.
So she loves the show. She listens to the show. She's a big like she loves so horror. Like I said, at a 13-year-old girl, like so when you think of like girls braiding their hair and like no, she chose Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. This is the original,
Mhm.
as her one of her movie choices. So if you could just do a real quick shout out to my cousin Demery because and she loves heavy metal. So like I mean, she's like the perfect fan of your material. So if you could just give her some love, I would appreciate it.
Hey, Demery. I love you. No. Leatherface loves you. No, I don't know. But I'm glad that you're a lifelong horror fan and have enjoyed Texas Chainsaw Massacre since you guys were around 13 years old. I believe you were underage. Isn't that a rated R movie? I think so. No matter.
Her dad got that for us.
And then did he serve dinner? Yeah. No, I love
Oh
that.
my
I saw that in the
God.
drive-in. I think I was
Oh,
underage too.
right?
Long,
Like,
long, long time.
we used to say to each other all the time, lick my plate. And like we would just mess with each other, like Bubba's got a girlfriend, Bubba's got a girlfriend. Like we used to mess with each other all the time. Like it's so funny because I'm an only child, but Demery and I spent a lot of our childhood together because her mom would lived with us for a little bit, and then we all lived together, with our grandparents when my parents were trying to get back on their own. And so Demery and I have like a lot of crazy childhood memories,
Hmm.
but the ones that just really stick are that birthday, that slumber party, and then the two of us, like we would call each other on the phone and we'd be like, lick my plate. So but yeah.
It's funny. You're triggering a memory for me. The first time I saw a Halloween, John Carpenter movie, was with a church group Halloween day thing. I was a little kid. The teenagers were, watching it on video, VHS when that was new. So,
Oh
a long time ago. But yeah,
my
that was
oh,
ironic. And I have all these memories of watching horror movies when I was growing up. I talk about this a lot with people. Like my dad used to take me with him because my mom wouldn't go, so he just like I would be his crutch to be somebody to be with when he was being scared at these movies. And I always tell people during the gory or slutty parts, let's say, the erotic scenes, he would cover my eyes, which to me backfired because I would imagine what was happening. It was usually worse than whatever was on screen. And I have this theory that that turned me into a horror writer. I don't know,
oh my God, that's awesome.
and horror is, it's funny. A lot of people would say like they remember their first time watching some movie back when they were a kid because it is a little transgressive. They are rated R. They are exploring taboo topics, whether it's sexuality, drug use, but also death and murder and sin and the evil that men do. And the stuff that parents don't want their children to be exposed to, but kids are curious about. So it's not, I don't want to say horror is a young adult genre per se, but that's the gateway is in our youth. And then later on, when we're mature adults, it did something to us. I wouldn't say it corrupted us entirely, but it makes us want more. We want to relive those kind of experiences where we're like, ooh, cool. I can't believe I'm, enjoying this kind of stuff. The taboo. And so
Yeah.
adult horror books kind of harken back, I think, to those childhood moments. And some part of it might be, uh, I'm theorizing now, a wish to connect with the community. I think like a lot of people don't do this alone when they go to the horror movies. The first
No.
time they watch a horror film or read a horror book, they're often talking with other people or they're in a group and
Yeah.
just, you know, so
Yeah.
it's a communal thing too. And some people just don't know that. And I think writers that haven't had those experiences, that aren't connected to other people in a community of some kind, often can't figure out how to do it, how to write to an audience, because they haven't really experienced being an audience in a collective way, maybe in a private way where they got their jollies off of watching some woman get, decapitated or something. Those twisted freaks that enjoy horror, they're in the minority. Outsiders think that's the majority, but no, they're in the minority. The majority of horror fans and writers and creators are actually laid back, cool, love to laugh kind of people like you and me. And I wish more people knew that. Maybe it's going mainstream. I don't know.
I love that you say that because that's exactly when I was at the Queen Mary. That was when I realized I had
Stoker
met,
Con.
yeah, StokerCon. I had met my tribe. Like I said, I was only 1 month into being a widow. It was the lowest point of my life. Saddest thing ever.
Hmm.
And I had so much fun at the Queen Mary, listening to the panels, meeting you, seeing the other people. watch like people had costumes and they were dressed up. George R. Martin was there, and like we
Yeah,
were in
yeah,
line, for an hour waiting to get his signature on our book. So
yeah.
like I
Remember those
said,
clowns? Were you at the thing where those clowns were dancing around? Maybe I don't know if you were there for that or not.
that doesn't sound
It
familiar.
could have been the opening ceremony or something. They had hired like performance art clowns to come and creep people out in the audience. It was very weird.
Oh
But
wow.
that was a good one though.
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing pictures of the 2016 event in Vegas.
Hmm.
And I was that was the first, I literally my mind was blown there for StokerCon. I was like, what is StokerCon? Who are these people and what is happening and why do they look like they're having so much fun? Like I want to be part of this. And unfortunately, my late wife was sick, and so we weren't able to go. And so the next year, I had purchased tickets, and unfortunately, she didn't make it. So I went with my best friend. And like I said, it was the lowest point. It was my birthday and being a
Oh,
widow. And like I said, when you wrote that, the picture, I think I've sent you the picture several times of me just with the goofiest grin on my face. So the fact that you were able to take that lowest point of my life and just turn it on its head, and my best friend and I, we just laugh about that all the time. And like I said, that's when I knew. That's when I knew. I was like, these are my people. I
that's
found
awesome.
literally, I said it that day. I was like, I found my tribe. I found my people. And it's true. I have thoroughly enjoyed being part of the HWA, meeting amazing people like yourself, Dr. Sandner, just it's been truly I can't say enough about how awesome it's been to be part of this community.
Well, the time was right for you to go, and you needed that,
I
and
did. I did.
we all need a little bit of that from time to time. That's why I'm going to StokerCon next week. I mean, I look forward
Yes.
to going back, and I don't know if I'm weird or different than other people. I like going to the fiction readings by different writers. They're often not very well attended for some reason, unless they're famous writers. I like to like meet new writers that maybe I read one of their short stories in a magazine that not very many people subscribe to.
Yeah.
I like to, but I also like to, shake hands with somebody famous, like I don't know, Paul Tremblay. Hey, Paul, how you doing? He's actually one of my favorite writers. I know him a little bit. Yeah, he's really good at what he does. But there are always new writers coming up. There are always new stories being told, and I just love to, see it live once a
Yeah.
year at least.
Yeah.
Be a part of it because and maybe this is something else, people who write these things that are trying to be professional, you gotta be a fan of this to really do it, I think. If you want to be a genre writer, part of you should be a fan and not just a mercenary. I'm going to write romance books so I can feed my kids. I mean, yeah, we need to make money, but readers know when you're bullshitting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all writers are bullshitters, but some of them, there's some truth in it. There's some, the kernel of it is true, or that the work is put into it in a way that cares about how readers actually respond, and not just, can I hook them so that they'll pay for the book? It's more like, can I hook them so that they will have a damn good time reading every sentence of this book?
Yes.
And you got to write for the reader within. Now, I'm saying all this assuming that your audience is a lot of people want to write. And I know I just got the news of pre-order for your book is gone live. So I'm
Yes.
going to buy a copy. I know it's not a horror novel, it's a memoir, but um,
It
you
is.
think it would inspire me?
You will appreciate this. So I have a piece of horror flash in there.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yes, there's a story in there called Drink
Awesome.
Coffee or Die. And it is, I think it's just under 1,000 words. I think it might be right at like 1,033 or 998 or something like that. But it was, so my late wife and I, we had gone to Kauai for her last trip. And there was this coffee mug. It was a coffee shop, and I think they were called Drink Coffee or Die. And so I bought the mug, and it has like the little skull on the calavera skull, like the sugar skull from
Yeah.
Dia de los Muertos. And I don't know, something about this skull just spoke to me. And I bought it. I bought this mug and I brought it home and I drank from it, made me happy. And then, of course, I became a widow and I didn't want to drink from it. I didn't want to drink
Oh,
from it. I just had this, I was like, I literally had mugs where I just didn't use them. And I actually
mm,
have a blog about that. But I did decide to create a short horror flash from that mug. I was like, I think I can fall in love with this mug again. And so I wrote a horror flash piece.
that's
So
awesome.
it's in there. There are two pieces. I think there's two pieces of horror flash in there.
Is a
Um,
picture of your mug in the book?
yes, yes.
Oh,
So
cool.
it's actually a photo-driven memoir. So it's a blog. So kind of how you were saying about your gorlets, like what you were doing. I was blogging. So writing for me was very cathartic, and it helped me process, everything that I was going through. And that's where like horror is healing, writing is healing, writing is cathartic. And so that's kind of like how everything kind of came into play, and then the podcast. And so this story just came because I did have horror stories during this time. So even though I was, super sad and life was shit, I still had little horror stories kind of coming at me. And I created this flash during this time. And I had fun with it. That's what I'm saying. Like I had fun creating this flash even though it was the worst part of my life. And I still have those pieces are actually on my website. I
Oh,
haven't put my horror stuff together because my current wifey, we are going to do our own little horror. I know you can't
collection?
call it an anthology, yeah, collection, because it's just two of us. But
Yeah.
she writes, oh my gosh, I can't, okay, Michael, you need to tell her she needs to write her stuff because her writing is so good. Like, I love her writing so much. I'm like, baby, please keep writing. I need you to write this stuff. So I am waiting. So we are going to have a collection of her stuff and my stuff in
Good.
a book together. So we're waiting for that to happen. So
Love it. You have
so
a
we
title?
no, well, yes, but I can't tell you.
Oh, okay.
So
One of
because
those books.
it could change, is what I'm saying. It could
Yeah.
potentially change. But I do have another. So even though my first book is memoir,
Mhm.
I have, and I'm not going to show you it, but I'm going to show you it. So I'm going to show you without showing you, because I don't want anybody stealing it. But this here, um, okay, this here.
Oh, the black.
Oh crap!
It's like a green screen. I can't see it. Wow, that's
This
a scary
this
manuscript.
it,
Ghost.
yes,
The ghost manuscript. That's awesome.
right.
Well, I
Um,
hope your viewers can see that. Listeners, if you're not watching this on YouTube, you just missed some
right.
creepy,
Oh,
creepy.
it's creepy, creepy. I disappear. Um, I've never written a novel. I do not profess to be a novel writer because, like I said, this is why I love Flash, and that's why when I discovered you and the efficiency of Flash, and my world was blown. So I'm right now. This is a Flash version of my novel because I'm just trying to get it out.
Oh,
As they say, just
smart technique.
write.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm literally just trying to get the stuff out of my head, and then I'm hoping to turn it into probably a novella, knowing me. But if not, this just might be the first piece of Flash. I don't know. It could be complete shit. Nobody, like you said, no one might like it because it's so succinct, but I don't care. It's mine and I'm happy.
Yeah, yeah.
And I like it. And if you don't like it, that's on you.
Well, that's the
It's,
attitude you got to have to get it done. Otherwise, the voices creep into your head. This isn't good enough. I can't do this. Who am I fooling? You get
oh,
imposter syndrome. You gotta choke the imposter syndrome out of you and just have the guts to make mistakes and do whatever it takes to get it done. And
Yeah,
tell your partner to, to get the pages out there, get it done because no one else is going to write them, and you're going to regret not, wasting your time not doing it.
right?
It's hard work, but it's worth the effort to kind of spend a little extra time each day working on something written. Uh,
Totally, totally. I I look forward to that. And in between that happening, I have this whatever the hell you call this, my horror, maybe flash novella. I don't even know. It's just words, my sick twisted words in a succinct manner. That's I'm gonna go with that. Um, so that being said, the final two things that I would like to discuss with you, your cat Hex is absolutely adorable.
Thanks.
So how did you come up with the name Hex for your cat?
Oh no! Why did you ask me this question? I'm gonna be so embarrassed. All right, Hex. Preamble. I am a cat person. I love cats. That doesn't mean I hate dogs, but I don't own one and I avoid one. I had a dog that got ran over once and it was traumatic and all that. So, but cats. Oh, I adore cats. So, uh, I adopted Hex. Uh, she was a stray or she was rescue cat basically. But I didn't know what to call her, and she looked like an average cat. Her breed, I was told, is Tabico, which is a tabby calico. So I like that word. So I thought, well, she had a name, a given name that they had assigned her. I believe it was Essie, and I did not think she was an Essie. I also didn't think it was really, she didn't belong in the Arnzen family. So my first name for her was Ghosty because she would like jump on the couch and I'd see her, I'd turn her and I'd look back, she'd be gone like a ghost, she'd like show up and disappear like a ghost when she was a kitten. So I thought, I called her little Ghosty. But my friends mocked me ruthlessly and said, "Oh, you scary horror writer, you call your cat Ghosty." They made fun of me and they were right. It's kind of a funny name. Like I would be embarrassed going to the vet and saying my cat's name is Ghosty.
Aw.
But anyway, so I said, all right, I just brainstormed and came up with Hex as kind of a short, fitting name because it's like a witchy cat. She's got a witchy charm about her, and she has become my little familiar. So, uh, and yeah, just feel so lucky to have that cat in my life. She's the cutest thing in the world, but she's really bonded to me. So,
Yeah.
and likewise. So,
Yeah. I
yeah.
love that. I love that. Nothing like rescuing, animals and having them, give you that uh, joy. There's, that you gotta, yes.
It's
So
sad that they don't live as long as they should.
I know. Oh, I
I've only
know.
had a few breakdown and cry moments that I can recollect
Oh,
in my life, and that was one of them when one of my cats died. I had to
oh,
pull over, when I was driving once. I just tears,
oh yeah.
uncontrollable. I started laughing, like, "Why am I crying?" It's like one of those like bizarro experiences, but it was because I had to put my cat to sleep. In fact, I wrote a story about it. It's in 100 Jolts. Maybe you remember it. It's called How to Put a Cat to Sleep. I've done that I've read that at events before, signings or whatever, and people get very sad. So I stopped reading it, but I
Yes.
think I touch on the truth of that experience and how hard it is to put an animal to sleep. Sorry,
Oh yeah.
segue.
Yeah.
Maybe we should
No,
talk about
no.
something else.
Yeah.
But Hex is alive and she's amazing.
She's awesome. She's
If anybody
awesome.
wants to see pictures of her, you can go to my
Go
Instagram.
to
It's at
Instagram.
Mike Arnzen.
I love it. So, you were in the army
Yeah,
and you said you were a radio dog. You were in the Signal Corps.
exactly. Yeah.
Now, check this out. My best friend that I met in Turkey, he was in the Signal Corps and
Really?
he called himself a cable dog.
Okay. I know what that is.
And he said he would sit in. So I read your it was the interview you did on the HWA for veterans. It was a
Oh,
piece on
wow.
veterans. So I read your
Yeah.
interview with them, which is where I came across this information. And so you were stationed in Germany. He was stationed in Germany.
Hmm.
That's how we met in Turkey. He was over on assignment,
Huh.
and we became best friends. But I'll never forget. He was telling me he was a cable dog, and so you were saying you would sit in a van and you would do all of your thing, sitting in this van.
Yeah, just twirling knobs.
Yeah, he would sit in the operator booth. Same thing, just connecting, phone calls in and out and phone calls, across like, and I was just like, how crazy is that? Like and now he went on to become, he went into the 101st Airborne, and
Oh,
so he did that crazy jumping out of planes and
yeah.
shit. But I thought it was really cool that so I had a direct connection to understanding like what you were talking about in this article, and I thought how cool another crazy cool connection, to be able to relate to you from a military perspective and the people that you came across. And I really liked what you had said about veterans in the military, specifically. You were talking about like PTSD and at the very end of the article, and I just thought, again, I was like, and here he is being poignant, not being sick and twisted, but actually being very poignant, and something that, especially because you said you don't talk about it a lot, and so I was just kind of curious to know, like, is there a reason you don't like to talk about being in the military, or is it just
Huh.
something that just doesn't come up?
Wow. I don't even remember what I wrote in that article, but I remember writing it at a time where I was starting to try to own up to the fact that I'm a veteran because I don't know, it's not because like I have multiple personality disorder, no. But I'm like a writer and a professor, and soldier doesn't really fit into that in a perfect triangle. So I kind of let that go because in my mind, that was something I did so that I could afford college. I was desperately afraid I would never get into college or be able to afford it when I was in high school because I was such a slacker, weirdo. I'd skip classes. I did all sorts of things. But really, I was just restlessly creative. That's my excuse anyway. But I joined the army just because I was like, oh my God, I really want to go to college, but my parents aren't rich. I don't have any money. I don't even really know what I want to do with my life. Why don't I just do this, make some money, put it into that GI Bill that you can get to help pay your way through school, and also just kind of experience life and think about it for a while. What am I going to do with my life? And actually, what happened was I was alone in a radio van so often. I was just reading Stephen King novels and Clive Barker books. And this was in the mid 80s, so this was the horror boom. And anytime I was in a permanent field site, which kind of sucked, but it also meant that in Germany, they put us in apartments even if we didn't have kids or whatever. So we were all a bunch of crazy army guys in this town in Germany. But anyway, whenever we went to the PX to buy things, I would always buy novels and read them voraciously. And then at one point, it just possessed me, and I said, "I can do better than this." I was reading a Firestarter, which is my least favorite Stephen King book. Don't hate on me, anybody. But I read that, and I started to see the pattern. You know what I mean? There's like a pattern to his plots that I thought I saw. I'm not saying he's always repeating himself, Mr. King, but I said, let me try to write a short story. And I did. And I read it to I did it by longhand. I read it to the guys because we had nothing else to do, and they were just cackling at me. And that's when I got hooked. When I realized I was making people laugh, I was getting a reaction. They were going, "Ew," and stuff like that. So I was like, I don't know if I'm a writer, but I got that. I can gross people out and make them laugh. I built a career around.
And
But
yes,
yeah, I mean, but nowadays, I also realize that it is a big part of me, that whole experience. Serving others is something I try to do through my deeds, not just by giving money to a charity. but I'm a workaholic, so I don't always go to like service opportunities. But in our program in writing popular fiction at Seton Hill, I noticed that we have a large number of veterans who want to learn how to write, and that this is a growing phenomena in the 21st century, post, Persian Gulf and all that. People have experiences they want to tell, and they too read a lot of books on downtime, as it's called. And so a lot of readers are veterans, and a lot of would potential writers are veterans. So it just I've volunteered to become the veteran liaison for our graduate program at Seton Hill University, and we've got a number of people, and we had our first like meeting at the last residency, and they were all like, "Wow, we finally," like they felt like they were bonded with people, not just because there was a fellow romance writer or fellow science fiction writer, but fellow veteran, and it's like an invisible tribe, if we can use that word again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Veterans sometimes get a bad rap, especially these days, because it's so patriotic, and gets tied up with nationalism. And there are some, what would you call them? Bad agents, people
Yes.
that don't have the best motives, or I don't know. I don't want to go off
Well,
on
I was
tangent.
like, I'll bring it back. Uh, so you'll appreciate this. So when I was in the Air Force, I was in from 92 to 96 active, and then from 96 until 2000 inactive, but
All
still,
right.
8 years was my contract.
Mhm.
Those four years, I I was so creative.
Hmm.
I never had so much content
Hmm.
coming out. Then again, I was also in my 20s.
Mhm.
I am experiencing people, cultures, places that I had never been exposed to before. So my world is just so we went to Germany, Luxembourg, France, like we traveled. So we were in Turkey. I was stationed in Turkey, and we didn't travel for the first 9 months. I just worked straight 9 months. I was
Hmm.
exhausted and I needed a break. So my roommates and I, we went to Germany. We went and visited our friend in Germany. He let us borrow his little Volkswagen Golf. We called it the Golf Golf. We drove that Golf all across Europe as far as we could take that little car without it dying because we had to come back. So we drove as far as we could. Like I said, so we went to France, Luxembourg, Germany, and then came back. Like I said, just exposed to crazy, amazing cultures, excellent experiences, and I feel like I was able to produce the most content that I've
Hmm.
ever. I would wake up. So I was then stationed in Arkansas.
Mhm.
I had swing shift. I would wake up at 8 in the morning, make a pot of coffee, turn on my typewriter, turn on the music, and literally write to my typewriter
Wow,
for hours.
that's great.
And then go to work, get off work, come home, hang out with my friends till like 2 o'clock in the morning, go back to sleep, wake up again at 7 or 8, and
Mhm.
produce and just write. Like I just had such freedom. So I hear what you're saying. Like like for me, the military, like I have nothing but great memories and
Mhm.
great associations with that time.
Right. And
You
it's not
know,
like you were killing people and stuff. That's
no,
the war veterans.
no, I was there.
That's a little different.
Yeah, so the Air Force, we get a lot of shit about, chair force, and I was like, well, we're zoomies for a reason, and so my buddy, so this is where I'm going to wrap it back up. When I met my buddy, my cable dog buddy, he and
Mhm.
I met and we wrote poems, we listened to music, we drew crazy art piece. I still have these pieces of art that we produced.
Cool.
And we met. We only had 1 week of friendship. And we became best friends during that 1 week of friendship. Like he would come over and visit, and we would just sit on the floor and draw and write and create and just spill our guts out in art in a creative form.
Well, I have a theory about all this, if you want to
Okay.
hear.
Sure. Sure. We've
Maybe it's
got,
not that earth-shattering or whatever.
okay.
There's something about the intensity of being in overseas alone with your fellow kind of soldiers, no or airmen, and no one speaks the language or something like that, or barely can survive. Yet you go out and you party all the time at the bars or the discos or whatever they might be, and you hang out with the locals, and you get to see like life. The sparkle of life is out there, and you get very playful. But the intensity of it all, like everybody's dressed the same, and it is a scary situation. Your life is on the line and all that. But the whole military complex exists to kind of erase your identity and create like a uniform soldier type. And so because you're with everybody dressed the same, acting the same, doing the same marching moves, then suddenly your personality comes out in sharp relief against that. You start to express yourself almost as a survival instinct of your humanity. And so everybody who's marching in a blockade or whatever, or flying in a pattern, those people are all very, very different. They just don't look it from afar. But when you're in the service, there's always everybody has like one thing they're known for. They get a funny name for it, that kind of stuff, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so that's kind of unique. And I feel like that helped me figure out how to write characters by being in that intense but lively, weird situation.
Yeah.
And I started writing when like I said, I tried because I thought it'd be easy, but it was hard. I just succeeded at making people laugh at the gross out. That was it. But it did inspire me to keep going, to spend that college money, become an English major, then a master's student and PhD, and become a professor and all that. So thank goodness I had that.
Yeah.
And luckily, it wasn't during wartime when I was there.
Yes, and I always, preface that too. So even though I signed up in 92, so it was a year after, Desert Storm, we still supported, like I was part of a humanitarian mission while I was in
Mm.
Turkey. Not many people can say that. And so I love that humanitarian. I have a humanitarian ribbon and I
Oh
have
my God.
humanitarian patch.
Wow.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Hey, I got a question for you, Michelle.
Bring it. What you got, Mike?
Turkey. Is
Yes.
that where your coffee fixation began when you were in the military in Turkey? Because that's like Turkish coffee. That's hardcore.
Yes. Well, not, no. So, yes, I love Turkish coffee, but no, actually, so you'll appreciate this. I was a horrible student in high school as well. I was always blowing out school, but I was always hanging out at the coffee shop
Ah, yes.
and writing poetry.
Mhm.
That was my favorite thing to do. I would sit and drink a bowl, I called it my bowl of cappuccino, and I would sit and just write and Poe. I just loved Poe. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I would have a Poe book with me, and I would have my journal, and I would have my bowl of cappuccino, and I would just sit and write, and I would just blow out class because I didn't find it as, you know, gratifying as sitting at the coffee shop drinking coffee. So I actually I blame my love of coffee actually on Adam Ant, because he said his favorite coffee drink is cappuccino. I
Huh.
was 12 years old and I was like, what is this cappuccino that he loves? What is it? So I went to Mom, what is cappuccino? Oh, well, cappuccino is a blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, I must have this cappuccino. And so Adamant placed the little seed in my 12-year-old brain and I fell in love with coffee and cappuccinos, and it's just been a love affair ever since. So I wanted to go overseas. I wanted England. I wanted Greece, but these bases were all being shut down. So Turkey was where they sent me. And it just helped with my coffee fixation. So
Okay. All
I was
right. So
like,
Adamant was your way in, but
yeah, he was the one that planted the seed. But yeah, so that I just fell in. So anybody who has a coffee culture, so Turkey, Italy, South America, those are my favorite places to just, and they're cafecito, to sit and have a little I was just like,
yeah.
yes,
Oh,
these are my people.
yeah. I love sitting down with a writer over a cup of coffee at a cafe. I used to do it in grad school all the time with my friend Greg Rucka. Now he writes like for Batman. He writes Batman stories. He does comic books.
Very
He's
cool.
written some thrillers. featuring Atticus Kodiak. Greg Rucka, he's a great, great writer. People should look for him if they like action thrillers. But he was a caffeine fiend just like me, and we would just sit around drinking this hardcore coffee, like
Yes.
brainstorming story ideas.
Yes.
It helps. It helps.
It does. It does. I mean, coffee fueled stories. I mean, but like I've been sitting drinking coffee since I was a teenager with my friends talking about writing. Like this, it's just like I said, it took me a long time to get here. And I too used my GI Bill. Same thing. I was 18. I knew I wanted to get my master's, but I wasn't ready for school at that time. I wanted to go party and play and see the world. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just not ready to go to school yet. I'm just not ready to get a master's. I'm not ready to commit to this 6 years of education at 18. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to join the military. I'm going to put my money aside, just like you put my money aside, and eventually go back to school and get that damn piece of paper. And, you know, same thing. And met Dr. Samner, David, and here we are.
We
So
are now.
how to
Uh,
how to bring it full circle.
Yeah, and he's doing a lot, David Sandner, with creative writing. Past 2 or 3 years, he's just kind of exploded with a lot of publications, including some like Frankenstein-inspired stuff that's pretty cool. So
Yeah,
anybody who likes Frankenstein needs to look for David Sandner.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
He
Michael,
was a guest on this, right?
he was. I had to have him on the show. It just there was like I said, he introduced me to the HWA and to your work, and it just again, all of these things just kind of fit and started, like forming in my life and helping, talking with all of these authors and writers, helping to inspire me. And so that's why this show, these are the writing nuggets that I want to share with others because I don't feel that I wouldn't be here with my published book without these other authors, helping me, inspiring me. So, like I said, Drink Coffee or Die would have never been written had I not read 100 Jolts and Dying back when we did. So, thank you.
Thank you for reading them and for having me on the show and for everything. Oh, I feel like we're old friends.
Right, right. If you could please sign us off with a go forth and be magical.
Ah, yes. All right, go forth, you weirdos, and be magical.